Hello and welcome. I'm Bob Lichter, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project for the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I am a member of the Kenosha History Center and have volunteered there since 2015. We hope that you will enjoy these programs. I'm with Louis Covelli, retired Kenosha Tremper Music Department Chair and Band Director. Hello and welcome, Lou.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing good, thank you.
Good.
Are you originally from Kenosha?
Yeah, born and raised here. Grew up near Wilson School. Went to Wilson, McKinley, Bullen for 1 year.
Wow.
They opened that school up, and I was the first 9th grade class, and Bradford. Yeah, so. My whole school career, I went through Kenosha Unified. Yeah.
Kenosha guy.
Yeah.
Being a band director, what caught your interest in music as a young person?
Yeah. Well, being of Italian descent, all 4 of my grandparents came through Ellis Island, and so my parents were big music aficionados. In our house there was always opera playing on the record player, or we listened to concerts on the radio, went to live performances. So it was something I grew up listening to. My dad was a big opera fan, Italian opera, Puccini, Verdi, and he listened to all operas, really, but he especially enjoyed Italian opera, and he especially enjoyed Italian tenors, and listening to those arias of the great Carusos, Corellis, Bjorling, Pavarotti, all those guys. So that kind of stuff was playing in my household all the time. Okay. As a little kid, I was weaned on that, Yeah. Yeah.
And what was it like then to go through the Kenosha Unified system with this interest in music like that? Were there teachers or mentors that made an impression on you?
Yeah, I had a lot of interests growing up. I was I played baseball, played football. I was involved in a lot of different things. I also started working at my uncle's grocery store at a very young age, 9 or 10. I was working at a place called Independent Food Mart that my uncle owned. And so I had a lot of interests. But in elementary music class at Wilson School one day, the band directors came in, band and orchestra directors came in and said, you're in 5th grade now, and you have the opportunity to play an instrument if you'd like to start playing an instrument. So I thought, I might like to do that. So I went home and told my parents, I think I want to play an instrument. And I have 2 older sisters that are 9 and 7 years older than me. And I really think at the time that my parents had more discretionary money when I was that age than they did when my older siblings were that age. And I think they had a little extra money to allow me to do that. And we went to the recruiting meeting, and I got to try a few instruments, and they noticed that we had taken what we called a musical aptitude test, which is a test that later, as a music teacher, I gave to 4th and 5th grade students, and it was a test to compare different sounds with one another, and I, I had already having listened to music so much in my home, I think I had a pretty good ear for music, and I did very well on that test. So they kind of steered me into a few instruments that are considered to be a little bit more challenging at the beginner level. French horn, oboe, those, and I ended up deciding on the oboe, and I've been playing it when I was 9. I'm 66, so I've been playing it for 57 years already, and it turned out to be a good choice for me.
Excellent. Yeah. So when you were in 4th, 5th grade and you made that decision, what opportunities were there for you in the school system, like marching band, jazz band, orchestra?
Well, when you're a beginner, you get a elementary group lesson once a week with an instructor, and then you would go occasionally after school to a beginning band experience at that time we were K through 6, 7 through 9 junior high, and then 10 through 12 high school. You would go to the junior high that once a week after school to have a beginning band lesson, and I would go to McKinley, and the person that started me at that time was student teaching at that time. His name was Jim Furco, and he was a very positive, energetic guy, and we developed a relationship, and I did well in my lessons, and I decided that this was something that I would like to do. But I was very active in a lot of different things, so, but I enjoyed playing and being in band and that kind of thing.
So throughout the junior high and high school, what groups did you play in then?
Well, being an oboe player, and I was enrolled in band, but it was the wind players from the band that make up the wind players in the orchestra. So like a couple days a week, instead of going to band rehearsal, we would go to orchestra and provide the winds, 2 or 3 flute players, a couple oboe players, 2, 3 clarinets, an orchestral wind section and percussion section would leave the band to go be an orchestra. So that was something that I had. Now, unfortunately, being an oboe player, you usually don't march with double reed instruments because the reeds are very expensive and very fragile. Okay. So I learned to play percussion for like marching band when I was old enough, going into 7th grade, and could be in Rambler band. I was in the percussion section. I started out as a cymbal player, then the next year I was a bass drum player, and then I did all different various percussion throughout high school and that kind of thing for marching band.
Okay. How many bands were there in Kenosha that supported the students? You mentioned Rambler Band.
Yeah, well,
was that the starting point?
There was that's the summer band program, but there was a middle school band program, band orchestra, choir program at every middle school, and a band orchestra and choir program at every high school. And in the summer program, like the kids in 5th going into 6th grade, we had what was called the KL band, which was a non-marching band, but you met during the summer 3 days a week, and you put on a concert at the Bambooster Ice Cream Social in July, late July. And then the next year, when you were in junior high, you qualified to be part of either the Continental Band or the Rambler Band. Okay. And those were the 2 junior high groups at the time. The program got real big, and they added a 3rd group called the American Band. So there was Rambler, American, and Continental were the middle, the junior high groups. And then at the high school, at that time, there was a Tremper and a Bradford summer band that basically was a continuation of the bands at that high school. But it was the summer band program was not something that you had to do. It was a voluntary program.
Were music courses at junior high and high school level, were they required or
No, all elective.
all elective?
And at that time, as a student, you really didn't have many elective options. So from 7th grade to 12th grade, you know, one of my electives, and you only had a couple if you were lucky. At junior high, I don't even think you had a couple. So I never got to take typing or those kinds of classes that would have been beneficial. But, you know, the computer thing, you know, I turned out to be pretty good at word processing, but it was all self-taught. I think it would have been nice to have had,
Sure.
you know, a class in typing or something like that.
Okay. What or how or when did you make the decision that you wanted to go into teaching and music education as a career?
Well, I think you know, everybody talks about the Kenosha Unified Music Program as being, you know, an exemplary program in the city, state, and in the country. And quite frankly, it has never been a high budget program. The strength of the program has always been the people that have taught in the program or been the administrators of the program. Ralph Houghton, who was the coordinator of music for many years, had a vision that he wanted a comprehensive music program in every school. What I mean by that is that there was a band, orchestra, and choir program at every school so that kids would have options to do any one of those. A lot of districts might have a really good band program, or they might have a really good choir program, but very seldom do you find a district that has a comprehensive program with all 3 aspects, and that was Ralph's vision. And another thing that Ralph did very well is he hired good people, and you know, I got to have some of what I considered to be my best teachers were my music teachers, and I think that kind of drew me to that, you know, people that were extremely motivated, people that really were concerned and cared about what their students learned and how their students performed, and I think that's one of the most important things in life, is to find something that you can be passionate about. And the alarm never went off in the morning, and I never said, shit, I gotta go to work. It was, I gotta go. I got so much to do today. I want to get there. Mm-hmm. And you can't put a price tag on that. I taught that for years. Yeah. Tried to be a role model, a positive role model. Let the students see that I enjoyed what I did, that I worked really hard at what I did, and that it was important to me. Mm-hmm. Hopefully modeling that for them, whatever they chose to do.
Mm-hmm. What was the time frame with Ralph Houghton's involvement in building that Kenosha Unified Comprehensive Music Program? Time?
Yeah, well, Ralph was a Racine guy, and he was an amazing man. He was an American of German descent. Got captured in World War II, and led a successful escape out of Germany because he could speak German, but that's the kind of leader Ralph was. He was somebody that could motivate people to do great things. Mm-hmm. And that's how he led the music program here. He got hired here, I want to say, in the late 50s, early 60s. And when I asked, and I got to know Ralph, first of all, as I was his son Steve, one of Steve's good friend, and Steve was a year older than me, went through the band program, and so we hung around together, and I spent a lot of time at the Houghton household playing ping pong and all kinds of stuff, and I got to know Ralph back then, and then later Ralph was the guy that hired me to come and teach in Kenosha after I got my degree. And I remember asking Ralph how he came to Kenosha, and because he was a band director in Racine, and he said that the Kenosha administration asked him to come, and they told him that they wanted to build a music program here. And Ralph said, I knew that there were a lot of people of European descent that had settled in Kenosha, and I knew that they would have an appreciation for the arts, mm-hmm. and that it would be a fertile community to develop a comprehensive music program. So that's how it started.
Okay.
And Ralph came here, and as the program grew, he came here, and at first I believe was the Bradford band director. And then as the program grew, he began to hire staff, and he then became the coordinator of fine arts. And then that's how the program evolved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So after you got your degree, what was your What was your first job then?
Well, I always had, while I was, even in high school, I taught private lessons, oboe lessons, and throughout college I would come back. I would work at my uncle's store, and then I would also teach a few oboe lessons. So I always did that. But the first time I was hired was I think the summer of 1978. I got hired to be Jim Furco's partner for the Tremper summer band, and the other band director at Tremper, Richard Johnson, decided to go do some graduate work that summer, and so I came in and I did the whole summer competitive. At that time, we would do competitive marching and concert, and there were different contests in the Midwest that we would participate in. So that was my first job that I was hired. There were no openings in Kenosha in 1978-79 school year, so the couple Kenosha guys were administrators at the Sauk Prairie School District, just about a half an hour north of Madison, and they called Ralph, and they said, we're looking for somebody. We had a band director here for many years, and he retired, and we're looking for somebody. And so Ralph gave him my name, so I drove up there and had an interview, and they hired me. So my first full year, 1978-79, was at Sauk Prairie High School, and I had a band, and I did marching band, jazz ensemble. I started a jazz ensemble program there, and I was there that year.
Did they have a curriculum in place, or did you have to do some development?
Yeah, they had a band. They had a pretty good sized band. I wanted to say about an 80-piece band, and then that met for one period a day, and then the rest of the day the kids would come down and take private lessons from me in the band room, and then we would do marching band before or after school, and jazz ensemble before and after school, and things like that. Had I stayed there, longer, I would have, put jazz ensemble during the day and had it as a class. But I ended up, Ralph called and said that he was going to be moving into administration, and Larry Simons was going to be taking his job as coordinator of music, and so then there was going to be an opening at Lance Junior High, and wanted to know if I would want to come and take that job. And my family was all here, and of course I said yeah.
Okay.
And so I came back. 79, 80 was the 1 year I taught at Lance. And then there was an opening at Tremper, and then 1980 to 2013, I was at Tremper. So.
What was a typical day like coming back and at Lance then? Starting out there, what was a typical day like?
Well, there were numerous bands that I had during the day, and at that time, band directors, orchestra directors, none of them were full-time at their, like I was, say, 60% charged to Lance. The other 40% I would go to my theater schools, Prairie Lane, Jeffrey, and I would do these small group lessons for the kids that were going to come to Lance the following year, the 5th graders. And so, you know, I would have, you know, I had 2 bands at Lance, and then I had like a beginning group at Lance to start kids on instruments that we necessarily don't start in 5th grade. Tuba players, bari sax players, and things like that. So I would do my classes at Lance, and then in the afternoon I would go on couple days I might be at Prairie Lane teaching my beginning band lessons, and the other days I might be at Jeffrey teaching beginning lessons. And that's kind of how the band director jobs were set up at that time.
And once you got into at Tremper there, what was the relationship like with the other teachers, and staff, counselors? Did you become friends and socialize with the group?
Well, remember I told you that there was when I started in 5th grade, there was a guy that was a student teacher, Jim Furco. He ended up being the guy that I worked with for 25 years at Tremper. And so we had a great rapport before that time. And Jim is, you know, just one of the nicest guys, and a great musician, and a tireless worker. You can't find anybody with a better work ethic than Jim Furco. And, you know, we just worked very well together. You know, Jim, we complemented each other very well. You know, I'm a little bit more assertive than he is, but he had other skills that I needed to learn from him. And so it worked out very well. The two of us, you know, and to this day we're still very close friends. And
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, 1980 to 2013. What tell me about your experiences, accomplishments, how the relationships went with students and parents, and as a band director, what are some of the things that you look back on and say, that was really something I'm proud of?
Yeah. You know, I was so fortunate in my career to be at a place for all those years where we had, you know, a lot of students involved. You know, like, you know, we always had 350, 400 students in the band program, and we had that same amount in the choral program, and the orchestra program didn't have quite those numbers, but it was still very very involved and very so, you know, when you have all that student involvement, it makes things a lot less troublesome. I was always, you know, for example, at when it was 10, 11, and 12, we had three bands at Tremper. We had a wind ensemble, we had a symphonic band, and we had a concert band. And, you know, Jim at that time would teach wind ensemble and music theory, and I taught symphonic and concert band. And but we did a lot of, like, if there were things that I needed help with in my group, you know, we would break down into sectionals, and Jim would take the brass in the auditorium, and I would take the woodwinds and percussion in the band room, and we would run the sectional or pull out kids that needed extra help while somebody was rehearsing their band. They would come into the and we would do private lessons and work with kids, and so that's how it started. When the Tremper became 9 through 12, when we switched, and then we added another band. So we had wind ensemble, symphonic winds, symphonic band, and concert band, and then we again split that up. Like Jim did the first and the last, the youngest. He did the oldest and the youngest, and I did the two middle. Keep in mind that then we would go do our elementary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after we taught our bands, we might get done at 1 or 1 o'clock, and then the last hour and a half, 2 hours, we would go to our elementary school and teach lessons. And that's how it kind of started. And you know, we always kept a very busy performance schedule, you know, between the concerts that we did at Tremper and then the district-wide events, Bandorama, Orchestra Festival. You know, we were, you know, our kids were kept very busy, and I think students like that when there is a lot of performances, and then so yeah, that's kind of there was never a dull moment. There was always something to do, and you never had enough time to get done what you needed to get done.
Okay. What about the marching bands, Rambler, Continental American? Did that evolve into anything else?
Yeah, so that's the summer band program. You know, and I think the summer band program was developed so, you know how they say students can lose half a grade level over the summer if they're not involved in reading or math or whatever. You know, we were always looking for a way to keep our kids playing and performing during the summer, because we knew that we would reap the benefits of that in the fall. They would come back as better players and more experienced players. So, you know, there was the Rambler and American and Continental were the middle school groups. And then in 1979, the high school switched to an all city kind of group, and that's when we began with developing the Band of the Black Watch. And not only was there the Black Watch, which was the summer marching band, there was a concert band program at the same time too. So students could, if they wanted to only march during the summer, they could do that. If they wanted to only play concert, they could do that. If they wanted to do both, we tried to set it up so that they could do both at that time. And so that's kind of how that evolved. at the middle school level, there was always a citywide approach during the summer. Rambler Band, Continental Band, and American Band were always, all the junior high kids would audition, and then we would try to split them up evenly into Rambler and American Band and that kind of thing. So we decided to do that at the high school level also in 1979, yeah.
Okay. Now, the band of the Black Watch was very well known, especially I think the marching band. Didn't you travel and
Yeah.
parades and
Competitions, parades, yeah. We did all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we traveled with 5 buses and 2 equipment trucks, and it was like moving a small city from place to place. And
what were some of the locations you went to and the competition, or maybe awards you won and things
yeah,
like
well,
that?
at that time there was a real thriving summer band program. There was a circuit of, there were groups in northern Illinois that were very active, and in Wisconsin. We always did the South Milwaukee Band Festival, the Cedarburg Band Festival, the Sun Prairie Band Festival. Kenosha had its own Great Lakes Festival. There were competitions in Carpentersville, Illinois, Harvard, Illinois, that we, took part in, and we did a lot of parades. Lake Bluff, Skokie, Morton Grove, all those communities all around. So I think over the years what happened is band directors slowly decided that they didn't want to work all summer either, that they needed some time away to recharge their batteries too. Like, for example, when I was involved with the Black Watch, I had my things at Tremper that I was doing, but the administrative stuff for Black Watch, even though on paper it was a 7-week summer band or 8-week summer band program, you were really doing administrative stuff and coordinating stuff year round. And that group would start in right around this time, actually, would be, so you do I do my Tremper stuff all day, and then every Wednesday night I'd have a Black Watch rehearsal for kids that came from Bradford, Tremper, sometimes some St. Joe's kids, sometimes kids from out in the county, because it was a program that anybody could get involved in. It was like the summer recreation swimming lessons. Anybody in the Kenosha County can be involved. So, and then we'd oftentimes have a Wednesday rehearsal, then also do something on Saturday, and you do that until summer started, and then at the first day of summer vacation, we would rent a facility someplace, either Oshkosh, UW Oshkosh, or Carroll College, or Beloit College, and we would go and we would have a band camp. For the first week of summer would be this intensive camp where we would teach, everything that we were going to do all summer long. And I would hire a staff and have instructors, specific instructors on each instrument to work with the kids and set up this big And then we would come out of camp that week, and it'd be, you know, every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there would be a competition that we would do. And that would go on until you'd take a trip the end of July, so it would be the beginning of August 4th or 5th, and you were just putting Black Watch together, and then I would get all the stuff from Tremper about the beginning of the school year, and in essence, I might have a week or 10 days to take a quick vacation, and then I was back at it again. Yeah.
I mean, the big production of Band of the Black Watch and the school programs in general. What support came from the community of Kenosha or local businesses?
Yeah, well, you know, there was always, you know, wonderful support in the community. And I think, you know, when Kenosha was more of a blue-collar town, when all that manufacturing that you and I reminisce about that happened here, I think parents really appreciated the fact that there was such a vibrant fine arts community in the local schools, and you know, we had a very active Kenosha Bamboo Store organization that supported us with fundraising and different events, and you know, I've had wonderful parent support, chaperones. You know, we would, I mean, you know, the Black Watch summer schedule was really demanding. You know, that was my job. Most of the parents were doing it for just the love of what we were doing and to be near the kids and see them. And I used to, I'm getting paid to do this. These guys are volunteering vacation time and doing all this stuff. But the support in this community has been wonderful. Ralph was right. He knew that this community would support something like that, and they did. You know.
Back in the old Kenosha manufacturing days, we had more than one manufacturer of musical instruments in Kenosha. How were they involved?
Yeah, well, the G. LeBlanc Corporation was very supportive over the years. Vito Pascucci, who was the president, and his partner was Leon LeBlanc, who lived in France, and they met during World War II. You know, Vito was a repairman for, I believe, the Glenn Miller band when they were in the service. He wasn't on the flight that that plane went down, but that's how he met Leon LeBlanc in Paris, and they developed this. You know, it started as a way to import musical instruments from France. Well, then Vito and Leon decided, well, why should we do that? Why don't we start manufacturing instruments and Vito being from Kenosha, he said, well, yeah, I think we should do that. And so they started manufacturing instruments here, the G. LeBlanc Corporation, and then they had the Martin factory, which did the brass instruments, and the LeBlanc in town here, G. LeBlanc focused on clarinet family, bass clarinets, all the different clarinets, mouthpieces. They dabbled with, you know, all the woodwind instruments. And one thing that Vito always did that was real interesting is he always had, not only did he have a sales staff and a manufacturing group, but he had an educational director. And the first one that I know was a fellow by the name of E.C. Moore that came from Lawrence University. And his wife, Ann Moore, was my first private teacher. She was a very fine flute player. And then the second educational director was James Nielsen. He had a long history of being a college band director and was very, very well thought of as a music educator nationwide. And he did a lot, would come and guest direct, come work with us at when I was at Bradford, and then when I became a teacher, Jim Nielsen came and worked with my groups, and it was a very great resource to have here. You know, yeah, so there was always a real close working relationship between the schools and LeBlanc.
Okay. Three plus decades of being a band director, a music chair. I mean, a lot of things changed in that time. Changes in technology, styles, pop culture, musical styles. What were some of the challenges for you with those changes?
Well, you know, the logistics of being a band director can be quite overwhelming. You know, you have a tremendous amount of equipment that you have to move all the time. And then, you know, if you have like, you know, at one time, Black Watch was, you know, close to 200 players. Just getting all of the music in every person's hand that they need in order to learn their music can be an overwhelming thing. And even, you know, you have 4 bands at Tremper. You are constantly, you know, trying to get pieces of music in everybody's hand. I can remember we started at Tremper. You had a carbon. We'd have a carbon page that you would, and it had the staffs on it, and then you would write by hand the music, and then you'd peel this off, and the back of it there was a actual carbon copy that I would put on the cylinder on this machine and put this clear fluid in, and by hand, cha-chunk, cha-chunk, one at a time. That was before copy machines.
Sure.
Then I think we got a thermofax machine where you could copy one page at a time, and you had to use this real thin material that after 3-4 years would change color, get brittle, and deteriorate, you know. So the invention of a copy machine that you could do multiple copies pretty quickly made a music teacher's life a lot easier. That's just one of the areas where now you buy a piece of music online, you get the files online, and you print them. If you have 13 clarinet players, and you divide that first, second, and third clarinet. I want 5 first, I want 4 first, 5 seconds, and 6 thirds, and then it prints it out exactly like that. So that has come a long way. The technology in the classroom has just been unbelievable. And in matter of fact, the last 10, 15 years of my teaching, that kind of really was the exciting thing for me, to learn all this new technology, to have a interactive board. We called them Promethean boards, where you could write music simultaneously and hear how it sounds and display it for the entire group to hear. And for I took the music theory class. I'm the guy that did the AP music theory, and tremendous amount of technology involved with that, as far as writing and students being able to, in real time, listen to their work, change it, listen to it changed, and see it. And it was unbelievable. It was very exciting. There was also this group that I worked with called Smart Music. It's a company that I became an ambassador and taught classes for, where kids could play excerpts of music in, and the software would analyze what they did right and what they did wrong, and show them what they did right and show them where they made their mistakes. And it's just fascinating, the technology. I retired in 2013. I can only imagine, what's people are working on now.
Yeah. What about the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s? Did changes in styles of music or culture or anything, did that have any effect on that traditional high school orchestra, marching band?
Well, I think that, pop culture does infiltrate the band, orchestra, and choir area. I think sometimes it's not as fast as people would like it to. I remember being asked the question by some parents, a few years before I was going to retire, how come you don't do any rap music or that kind of thing? Well, it takes a while before people begin doing arrangements. So that then the publishing companies make those things available for you to buy, and then use them with your band. And if you look at hip hop and rap music, they have become much more instrumental heavy, with horns and horn sections and riffs. When it first started, there was a guy with the scratchy thing back there, and it was all kind of but now, I don't know if you watched the Grammy Awards the other day. There was a rapper that had almost a full orchestra behind him doing, so you could see, that's moving, taking some of what, the structured music programs have, and pulling that into their genre, and then it makes their genre more attainable for school groups to get involved
Understood.
with. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. What was the best part of being a high school band director, music chair?
The rapport with the students, by far. There's I got to have students for 4 years, and it was a real opportunity for me to develop relationships with students, families, and then as I got older, I actually had students of students that I taught in my class. But there's something about, and being a band director, whenever your students do anything as a full group, you're the guy, you're standing up there with them, performing, right? You're conducting. So it's not like, there's a real ownership there because, what they do is a reflection of the work that you've done and that you've taught and that you've rehearsed and that you, if we could get that in every area of education, I think education would be a lot different, and teachers would teach a lot differently. So that that was always really important. There's something about when you are performing with somebody, and as a conductor, when you look at that first trumpet player and he's got a solo, and you and him connect, and you cue him and show him how you want it to be played, there's something about that moment that is real special about that, with that. And I think you touch down real deep in a person's psyche, and it's a great thing. And those are the moments. And I would tell people, I was lucky. I had some great concerts at Tremper, but I used to get chills in rehearsal.
Cool.
Just because, and I'd stop sometimes and I'd say, I wish you guys when you become an adult or whatever career you choose, I wish that you could experience some of the feelings that I get. As a band director, you got to realize that 97% of your students are probably not going to go on in the music. So what is it that you want them to take away from this class? You want them to take away all the group, 120 kids working together toward a goal, and the camaraderie that's developed, and how you get the best out of that group. You're the guy that has to stand up in front and make all the decisions musically, and how you rehearse. And so my goal was to always show them that I was extremely prepared, that I'm making these musical decisions because these are the reasons why, and explain to them so they could learn to make those decisions down the road on themselves, and to enjoy and have fun, but work hard, and all those are the things that I think I wanted my students to come away with in band. Now, the people that hey, Mr. Covelli, you know, I want to make music my career. Now, then those kids had a whole other specific things that they needed to do to get them ready to get accepted in music school and that. But, you know.
Wow. You had told me, I think it was a really interesting thought, that you had sort of like a sports analogy where a sports team versus an orchestra. When you're in the orchestra, nobody's on the bench.
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of similarities between athletics and involvement in athletics, and a lot of the same positive things, you know, belonging to a group and working as a collective goal towards something, and those things they share. The things that they don't share is, you know, when you're on a basketball team, the top 5 or 6 kids play all the time, and the rest of the group oftentimes is there so that those kids have somebody to practice against, and they sit the bench. In music, nobody sits the bench. Everybody has to perform, and everybody has to perform at a high level if you want the group to sound the best that it possibly can be. So that's a great thing. Also, in music, you know, we always talk about in education, every kid learns differently, so there has to be differentiation in teaching and whatever. A lot of that is built into music. There are first, second, and third trumpet parts. The first players have to be able to play high a lot, and the third players, their parts aren't quite as high, but they're just as important as the first parts and have to be played just as well. And it's built right in, you know, all the sections have, you know, different 4 French horn parts, 3 clarinet parts. You know, those types of things are kind of built in. So it's really nice.
What's it like now at this point when you run into a former student that's now in their 40s or 50s? Hey, Mr. Covelli, how you doing?
For the most part, those are really, it's great to see former students, and they usually have, you know, really nice things to say about their time in band, and I get, you know, those were the best times of my life, traveling with the band and going to band camp and those kinds of things. It's you know, it's very humbling, and but yet it's really nice to know that maybe in some small way that you've touched a young person a certain way. You can't put a price tag on that. Yeah. That's the intangible of education, and you know, you're never gonna make a lot of money, but there are things that are more important. You know, I just wanted to be able to raise a family and both my girls got to go to a Big Ten school, and they got great careers. And my wife and I were both educators. For me to just say that I raised a family teaching and playing music, that's, my parents, my dad didn't have any opportunity like that. And that's what when my grandparents came over here from Italy in the late 1800s, carrying only what they had, that's exactly what they wanted to have happen. They wanted their descendants to have opportunities that they never did. And I was in the right place at the right time, I guess.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So what does a retired high school band director do?
Well, what do? I have spent some time working with band kids that want to be band and orchestra directors at Parkside in Carthage. I teach a class or two over there occasionally, and that's been really fun. I've got the opportunity to winter in Naples for 6 years. My kids now all live and work in Portland, Oregon, so we spend a lot of time out there. I've been to England and Italy. I had a really nice trip planned to France, but that got canceled because of the pandemic. But we're looking forward to doing more traveling and spending more time with our kids and our grandchild out in Portland.
Okay, good. Do you have any special memories to share, little anecdotes or anything from over the years?
I've been real fortunate over the years to work with some really, work closely with some really fine, great educators, great musicians. I've already mentioned Jim Furco. I want to mention Larry Simons, who took Ralph's job as the coordinator took Ralph Houghton's job as the coordinator of fine arts. Ken Wheely's another outstanding music teacher that I had the opportunity to work with. Alex Sable. I could go on and on, but I've been real fortunate.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Kenosha History Center and Kenosha Community Media, thank you for participating in the Kenosha Voices project.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor to be asked to do this, and I hope anybody that looks at this in the future might find it somewhat interesting.